The last thing we're going to talk about is the spider sense, and this is really sensory augmentation so that it can warn you of some sort of danger. I know when people ride bicycles in the city, I've seen people with these little mirrors. These little mirrors so they can see behind them and they're not getting creeped up by some car or somebody else wants to pass them and they don't end up getting sent to the emergency room. And so what we're looking at here are augmented devices. They can be visual, auditory, tactile. They may be made up using Arduino device, these little chippy computer things that you can put sensors on. And it's really sort of like ESP for reality, because there are lots of things that these Arduino devices will plug into, and you can sense what's going on. Put a camera on it, you can put a sonic detector, and you can detect whether there's someone behind you or whatever. So there's a lot of things that you can plug into these Arduino devices. Any kind of sensors from the body, for instance, you're taking heart rate, any kind of skin temperature, things of that nature. Things that we don't necessarily know the value of. You know, in other words, to know my temperature, I'd have to take a thermometer and go through that whole business. Or if I needed to know what my heart rate was, I'd have to put my finger on my pulse. And if I needed to know what my EKG looked like and whether it was good or not, I'd have to put an EKG system on my chest in order to record the electrical activity of my heart. So what we're looking for here is different kinds of systems that could be used to make people aware of their surroundings, for example. You have like the bike rider or the jogger wearing augmented sunglasses and alert them to different kinds of dangers that maybe they're approaching or are approaching them. For example, there's a car behind you and it's arriving at a very fast speed. You could have sonar sensors that I talked about before so that they can see behind them or see to the right and to the left and then display that information. It doesn't have to be complex. It can be nothing more than, you know, an LED flashing or some sort of symbol flashing for them to let them know that there's something going on. So these things that you see here are currently available in stores, and we can make some sort of head-mounted device using glasses of some kind to have these sensors plugged in. They can all plug into your phone can process them and send them to Bluetooth to a device that you wear on your head. So these are all devices that can be made using Arduinos and plugged in. So let's see. These are other kinds of things that you can have. You can have a camera so that your peers can see where you're going, or if you have people that want to know, oh, how do I get to a certain place, or where are you going, where are we going to meet, or what's the path. You could have the video sensor that's going to record exactly where they're going to go, where you're going, so that they can follow along. You can get different things from the city about closures of certain parts of the thoroughfare, that there may be other kinds of alerts about, oh, there's going to be a 5K run and these streets are closed, and so on and so forth. So there's a lot of information out there, and that information can be streamed to you and it can be presented to you. The problem we have is both the sense that, those things that aren't necessarily being sensed, and also how do we display those things to someone so that they become additional information for them to use, but they don't overload the person so that the person becomes sensory overload and they're unable to do the main task that they want to do. Now, these are just some examples, and if you have other ideas, and I hope that you do, because we don't necessarily have the best ideas in the world, that we can work with this and we can create a whole set of senses, or sensor senses, that people can use when they're on their bikes or they're running the jogging trail or whatever else they're trying to do. Now, in terms of that sort of what you can do for almost anybody, but there's also the ability to feedback different kinds of senses of your body. Biofeedback, which I learned about when I was a graduate student back in 1970. Biofeedback is where you measure something about your body and you feed it back to the person so the person understands it. And biofeedback has turned out to be a very important and very strong tool in rehabilitation and in training people to reduce things that they don't want. And what I'm going to talk about just briefly is this thing called congenital nystagmus. Congenital nystagmus is something you're born with, the congenital. And what happens is your eyes don't stop moving. So your eyes are constantly rotating backwards and forwards, backwards and forwards. The result of this is that you see objects very indistinctly. Everything's a little bit blurred. It's not crystal clear as you see them when your eyes are stopped. You may have experienced nystagmus if you spun around as a little kid and stopped, and all of a sudden the world starts to spin around at you. Okay? Well, congenital nystagmus is virtually the same thing, except that if your eyes never stopped moving, eventually your brain you wouldn't get sick, and you wouldn't see the world spinning. What you would see is a very indistinct world. And I'm going to show you an example. So I got this off of YouTube, and it's a pretty good example of what happens when you have congenital nystagmus. And I think this was done in a clinic. So you can see this little girl is trying to look straight ahead, and she can't. Her eyes are constantly moving back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And the effect of this is that you can no longer see things as clearly as you would if you could stop this. This other person has smaller nystagmus, but still that's there as well. And if you look at nystagmus, here's someone who's normal, has no nystagmus, and is following something moving back and forth like this. Someone who has nystagmus, these little squiggles here, that's the eye moving, never really stopping, even though the eye is following something, the eye is constantly oscillating back and forth. And here's a time trace of someone with nystagmus, so you can see that there's these little jumps, and it comes back, a jump, and it comes back, jump, and it's come back. So the eye's doing this. Now, they found that you can train people to stop doing this. And that's what you see in the bottom trace. Same person after training. And what they do is they use biofeedback. They take the signals from the eye, these little electrical activity that's staggering this way, this nystagmus. They feed it into an audio amplifier, and they can hear their eyes. So they hear whoop, 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 whoop. So it's changing either the tone or the frequency of the sound that they hear. And the clinician says, I want you to make that sound go away. And they do something. I don't know what they do. The clinicians don't necessarily know what to do. But in a majority of the cases, after a certain number of training exercises, the sound, the nystagmus, doesn't necessarily go away completely, but it gets reduced significantly. So the idea with this whole spider sense could be that we could put electrodes on people, they stick on, they can plug into their iPhone or their smartphone, and they could take the information that's coming from these eye movements and then use that to play a sound so they could hear what their eyes are doing 24/7. So you put electrodes on the skin, you feed the signals into the smartphone. The app takes the signals and turns them into modifying auditory sounds, and then the biofeedback is used to reduce the amount of nystagmus that these people hear. And when they go to the clinic, and I've actually been in a clinical situation where they've had people come in to train, and it'll just knock your socks off. Because they put the electrodes on, they plug them into the amplifier, you can hear this thing just wailing away. After about 5 minutes, I swear, 5 minutes, this one particular patient was there when I was there, it went down significantly. It didn't go away completely, but it went down significantly. And what the researchers have told me is that when they get out of the clinic, they say, why can't you give me something that I can hear my eyes move so I can stop them? So one idea of SpiderSense could be is to record these eye movements and being able to play them back to these people, and they can walk around all day if they wanted to and train themselves to reduce the amount of nystagmus they have. So that's another possibility of the SpiderSense. So I think that's going to conclude what we have today. So what I want you to do now, you've heard really great talks about all 4 areas of projects, and what I want you to do is I want you to send me an email with nothing in it but the 4 projects. And I want you to order the 4 projects in priority for you. Okay, which one do you want to work on first, second, and third? I want them numbered 1, 2, 3, 4, and I want the names. Okay? So I want you to send me that email. I would like to have the email by, I would say, Tuesday of next week at the latest. I know it's going to take you time to think about this, and I want you to think about it. So please email me no later than Tuesday of next week about what order you would want to be considered for the 4 projects. Okay? Any questions? No questions? All right. Well, we're almost out of time.
So for the last project, we'd be working with you now?
Yes, you'd be working with Professor Lee and myself. Yes?
Is there going to be one group per project, or will multiple different teams be working on it?
We have multiple teams that will be working on each project. I mean, each area.
Right.
Now, whether that would be the same project and with different flavors, I don't know yet. That's something that we have to work out with the people who are heading up that project and so on. But again, if you have ideas, I mean, you can tell from the interaction that you had with the professors that have given you the introduction to the project, they're very much interested. This is not set in stone. There's a lot of stuff that can be changed. There's a lot of stuff that can be innovative, and to do that would be really great. Yes.
So the last project was about the dyes. That's the SpiderSense project?
Yes.
Well, it doesn't have to be, you were saying that it doesn't have to be about the stigmas though, right?
No, it doesn't. That's an example. That's an example that I wanted to put something up there that people could see how this biofeedback could be used as well. So it doesn't have to be that. I mean, you can say, gee, I want to do something where you have radar on the back of the bike and you can see it all on this head-up display that you run around with. That's fine too.
So just to expand on Thomas's question, so for example, with the auditory or audio dilation, there might be one group that's working on maybe how to test its effectiveness, and maybe a different group that's working on the development of the application, for example?
Possibly, yes.